Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. As always, we appreciate you joining us here on Faith in Your Recovery. Got a special guest today that I've known for a lot of years. We go back to probably his being in elementary school. He was classmate of one of our sons, right about that age, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, so his name's Lee Funkhouser, but we're just glad you've joined us here on Faith in Your Recovery. We hope you'll continue to do so. You'll let some friends know, and that you'll contact us. Go ahead, reach out to us with your questions. I know Lee will be glad to join them. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you, Randy.
Tell the folks where you're at in life right now, what you're doing, and then we'll go back and tell the early story.
Right now, I'm a therapist at Avenues Recovery in Fort Wayne.
How long have you been there, Lee?
3 years.
3 years. How much of that time has been spent as a therapist?
The last year.
The last year. What was your role prior to that?
I started out as a group facilitator, and then I went to lead group facilitator, and then I transitioned to therapist.
Tell us about Avenues. What do they offer? What are they about?
Avenues is a treatment center in Fort Wayne. They offer 30-day inpatient, 60-day, 90-day. It just depends.
Okay. So let's go back a little earlier in life. Go back to your day when you were fighting your own demons, where you were dealing with your own need for recovery, but weren't there ready for it yet. I know you've been through a lot of things. Tell us how that started, the age, what went on, what it was about.
Okay. The first time I ever got drunk, I was 12 years old. At 15, I started injecting and cooking methamphetamine, and it just transitioned on into there. You know, I injected drugs for 30 years of my life.
For 30 years. How did it begin, Lee, the drugs? Was it friends, peer pressure? Was it a desire to belong? We hear all these things, and I know everybody's story is different. Tell us about yours.
Well, I really couldn't tell you that. I had a good life, good family, no trauma. Just for some reason, I went out and sought it.
Okay, and once you sought it, you found it, and it found you, and got a pretty good hold if it held on to you for 30 years worth.
Yeah, I was a person that never wanted recovery. You know, I was just going to use until I die, and that's what that's who I was. It's what I did. It's what I brought.
What was it, do you think, that kept you from wanting recovery? I'm going to guess you thought you enjoyed what you were doing, but there had to be a ton of consequences that came with that and losses.
I guess the lifestyle, I didn't know any other way. Not only was I addicted to the drugs, I was addicted to the lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. What did that lifestyle look like? What did that mean for you? Was this an everyday kind of thing, multiple times a day? What did a week look like?
It was drugs and violence. And, drugs was my master, and I would serve it 24/7.
Okay, what about that violence?
Well, I first started getting in fights in high school and was tried as an adult at 15 and then put on house arrest for a year. And then when I turned 16, I went to jail.
Okay. Your friends, how many friends were in this same drug cycle with you, Lee? Were there quite a few, or did you have to seek them out, or did they kind of find you? What'd that look like?
Quite a few. Most of my friends are either dead or in prison now.
Yeah, I can remember a lot of those names of ones from that era, that time frame that have been lost. So, and family members as well for you, yes?
Yes. Yeah. I lost my oldest son. He overdosed and died. I've lost a nephew who overdosed and died. I've lost other family members due to drugs and alcohol, and several friends.
Yeah, yeah. I'm aware of some of those stories, and obviously the trauma and the tragedy of all of that.
Yeah.
So you said you were hard at this for like 30 years of your life. How many overdoses in that time?
I've overdosed 10 times that I've been hospitalized for. I can't tell you the amount of times I've woke up on my back in a pile of puke. How many times I've overdosed like that, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, yeah. But 10 times warranted being in the hospital because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What was it? When was the moment? What did that lights on moment look like that said, I've got to break this. I've got to get out of this?
Well, it was either I was going to live or I was going to die. And I had overdosed, I was in jail, and I was addicted to benzodiazepines, heroin, methamphetamine, and buprenorphine. And I was in the cell and I was praying to God not to go through any withdrawal, and I didn't. He took that from me instantly. And that's where I've always believed in God, but through my life, there was a period of time when I quit praying for probably 15 years once my brother was killed. So I just lost connection, and if I would pray, it would be convicting me of what I was doing was wrong, so I didn't. But when I was in jail that time, I prayed, and God actually took that from me.
That's a pretty incredible moment to be involved with that many different things. And of course, nobody would want to face the withdrawals and everything that would go with recovery. So what was your recovery process like?
Well, when I was in there, I prayed, I felt the power of God. I started reading the Bible, and I reached out to you. And I asked if Brianna's Hope could send me to treatment. So you guys sent me down to Harbor Lights.
In Indianapolis,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. What was that experience like? How long were you there?
For my first time I was there, I was almost there a year. And it was great. Harbor Lights saved my life.
Okay. What did you gain from that? What's some of the knowledge that you picked up?
Well, I had actually learned that I didn't have to live like that anymore, that there was another choice I can make, I guess, that there was another way, because, where I come from, there was no recovery until Brianna's Hope was started. We just use until we die, and that's just what we do.
That's the way our community was back in the day, and I'm sure it wasn't the only community that way. Brianna's Hope that Lee speaks of will be 10 years old November 5th, here in just, a couple of months, basically. And before that, as Lee said, there were no programs. There were the occasional AA programs, which that worked, but it wasn't enough. And so with the growth and the process of recovery programs being made available, a major difference has been made. And just like how old's Avenues? How long has Avenues been around, Lee?
The one in Fort Wayne's been there for 4 years.
4 years. See, that's new. That's a babe as far as the the recovery, but within the last 4 to 6, 8 years, there's been a lot of growth in the recovery area, and there are now options, whereas before, as you just said, the options were minute if there were any. So yeah. What is it that kept you on the track to recovery to get you where you are today?
This is all God doing for me what I couldn't and wouldn't do for myself.
Okay.
All the glory to Him.
Yeah. I've known Lee's spiritual walk here for the past few years. I've seen the changes, seen God at work, a prime example of God's power and His love and everything that goes with it, obviously. What has been the most challenging part of your recovery?
When my oldest son overdosed and died, I did okay for a couple months after that, and then relapsed, overdosed myself, and then was in the hospital on a ventilator. When God's got plans for you, He's got a way of putting you right back on track.
So how old was your son when he passed?
20.
He was 20, okay. And out of the pain and the anguish of all of that, I don't know if it was a relapse or a continued use at that time, but you ended up on a ventilator. And then out of that, you came to recognize God's still here. God's still working with me and working on me.
Yeah, that's, I woke up in that hospital bed and I actually felt the love of God wrapped around me, that I didn't put my other kids through this, and I didn't put my parents through this, that I was alive. And it was just a relapse, overdose, back in the hospital, and then right back on track.
Wow. How long ago has that been?
Over 4 years.
Over 4 years. Okay. What was the first moment that you recall, not that told you you could do this, but you recognized you were doing it? You were changing directions.
I guess it's been from the beginning. God has revealed things to me, showed me things, and I am continually growing spiritually.
It's process. It doesn't happen overnight, does it?
Progress, not perfection.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a question here. Eric, will you share that question with us?
Yeah, I actually have 2 questions now. The first one, well, they're both from Dustin. How many success stories do you have on average from Avenues? And then a follow-up, what is your proudest moment since being sober?
We have a lot of success stories from Avenues. That being said, we also have some not so successful stories. There's been deaths. I've experienced clients overdosing and dying that I hear about and read about in the paper.
Okay. What about that second question? What's one of your proudest moments?
One of my proudest moments would be when my granddaughter was born.
Being sober to get to witness that, to participate from where you were. How old is she now?
2.
She's 2 years old. So that was just a couple of years ago.
And I would say for my dad to see me sober before he passed.
Yeah. So that's big stuff there. What is a piece of advice you would give to somebody out there who is where you were? And by that, I mean, you said there was that point where you didn't care. If you saw another day, it didn't matter to you at that time. You weren't into, quote, God yet. Let's say somebody's in that position. What's the advice you'd give?
I would say don't give up. As long as you're still breathing, there's still hope. There is a way out. We don't have to live like that anymore.
And that's what it's got to come to, the choice not to live like that anymore. We always say denial. That's the first thing we've got to get over. But we've got to recognize and realize we're worth living. We do matter, regardless of what our past has been. It doesn't have to dictate our future. Yeah. So, of your clients, and we're not going to get into anything personal with them, but what is a commonality you see among your clients when they first come to you, when they first come to Avenues?
I would say just fear of the unknown, not knowing how to feel or think without drugs.
Yeah.
It made me, when you say we don't have to let our past define us, it made me think of my clinical director. She told me, she said, I had one of the worst legal resumes she'd seen as far as things like that. And it just goes to show you that we don't have to let our past dictate our future.
Yes. Yeah, and that's an important thing. But to get to that level of confidence of realizing I can do something, that's got to be a battle in itself.
God had to break me. I had to be broken down to where I had nobody else to cry out to, nobody else to ask for help. I had to be broken. And I think, once you get to that point where you have no other place to go or place to call out to, or, to where you're only left with him, for me, that was my breaking point, my changing point. And I cried out and he heard me.
Yeah. And we can count on that. Whoever we are, whatever we've been about, we can count on that.
Amen.
That indeed he'll hear us. And he'll lift us up, because his plans for us are not to harm us, but to prosper us. And that's what he's after for each and every one of us. What would you say to those who have been clients of yours? What's one of the first steps that you see in clients that you realize, they're starting to recognize there is a different life, a better life?
It's almost like you see a light turn on in their eyes where they start to get it, and part of that first would be surrender, acceptance, admitting that they are powerless over their addiction and their lives have become unmanageable.
Are you able to share your faith in your work as you're sharing it with us?
I can share when it pertains to me, when I'm talking about me.
Okay. It's a lot like when a Better Life, Brianna's Hope, goes into a school because of the church-state issue. We can make comments about ourselves, but we can't advise them. We can't say, you need this, but we can say, I needed this, and it worked for me. I simply cannot say, you need this, it'll work for you, because then I've crossed that line. So, yeah, there's some freedom there within all of that. What's some of the success stories you've seen?
I've seen, not only have I seen success stories at work, because we have an alumni meeting that I get to go to and see how some of the clients that I've had are doing, but I've also seen it in my meetings. I see people that are now working in this field that have come where I have come from, and they're just doing phenomenal.
Tell the folks what you mean by in your meetings.
I run a Brianna's Hope meeting in Red Key, Indiana, and then one at the Delaware County Family Resource Center in Muncie. And So I'm able to connect with a lot of people, and it's just wonderful to see when they finally get it, and then they start changing their lives.
Tell the folks what a typical Brianna's Hope meeting looks like. They're in Red Key or Muncie or blend the two.
Well, it would typically start out with a meal. You know, when I was first coming to the Brianna's Hope meetings, I wasn't coming per se for the meeting. I was just coming to eat because I had no food. So that gets us, and gets people into them, gets you to have fellowship. And then after that, it would be victories and struggles, report, and then some kind of lesson or reading, and unless somebody was struggling, and then the meeting would go, and everybody would focus on what needed to be focused on and help that person out who was struggling.
We call ourselves participant driven. And that's what you're saying right there. You go with a plan, you go with a lesson ready to share. But if there's a greater need at the moment, you turn to that need and deal with that and what it's creating, what kind of triggers it may be, causing in somebody's life. How can we reach out? How can we support? Those kind of things, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. And tell the folks when you meet there in Red Key, when you meet in Muncie, and give them the locations.
In Red Key, we meet at the United Methodist Church, 102 West Main Street in Red Key in the basement. And then in Muncie, it's 905 South Delaware Street at the Delaware County Family Resource Center every Saturday morning. 9:30 is breakfast, 10 to 11:30 is the meeting.
And that's the evening meeting. What were those times again for the Red Key?
From 6 to 8.
From 6 to 8. So we plan about a half an hour for the meal, an hour and a half for the meeting. So a couple hours overall. Mm-hmm. And the only requirement to attend is to show up, right? Yep. And we want to hear your story when you're ready to share it. We need to hear your story, and we believe you need to be able to share it. So that combination works well, and you mentioned the idea of fellowship there, which is the opposite of addiction. Community, fellowship, whatever you want to label that, the importance that we get through support from our friends who've been there, done that, have the scars to prove it, and are living proof it can be overcome. So, yeah. What's one of the highlights of your personal recovery other than, being there for that grandchild's birth?
Not only am I able to be there for her, I'm able to be there for my children. I'm able to be there for my mother, my family, my friends. I'm able to be there sober. I'm able to enjoy things and experience things. Where before, everything took second place to me getting high. The kids, family, whatever that may be, it all came after I got high. Now I'm no longer a slave to that. I don't have to have that in order to take care of my family, to have relationships with my family. I'm able to be present. I was there for years with them physically, but mentally I was gone.
Able to be present, that's a key. What would you say to parents who are dealing with a child that's struggling with their own addiction?
Get them to a meeting. Get them in treatment. Get them to a meeting. Get them some kind of help. Talk to them. Find out what's going on with them. Because nowadays it's no longer about getting high. It's either you're going to live or you're going to die.
And it can be one and done today with fentanyl as it is and all that goes with that. I can remember a day where we talked about, I'm just experimenting with drugs. You don't experiment now. It's way too dangerous. What do you see as something we could be better at as a culture, as a society?
I still think there's a stigma towards addiction, and I would like to see more resources, more help available. I mean, it's better than it was, but it's not where it should be. We're losing a lot of people still to it. And I just feel like having more resources, having more places to go, having people educated so they understand that this isn't a choice, it is a disease. You know, we may choose to get high, but we didn't choose to be addicts.
You know, you're touching on it there, but talk about stigma. Let the folks know what you mean by stigma.
It's like when people think they know things about you and they make judgments and already have their mind made up about, oh, he's an addict, he's a weak person, or he's a bad person, or it's due to a moral failing, and that's not the case.
Okay. What can you say to try to dispel that?
I would say, I'm here to tell you that it is possible that we don't have to live like that anymore, that there is a way out.
And that we can do it. And some can go ahead and say, and I will do it. Now, there may be a stumble along the way, and hopefully, if that's survived, you've still got that fighting chance. And yeah. What is a, excuse me, what is a lesson you want our listeners to hear? Other than, and you've repeated it quite often, the idea of we can recover. You've said that in so many words multiple times, and that's vital. Give somebody that chance. What is another lesson you want to beat home, Lee?
That it doesn't matter whether you got 20 years or 2 days clean. None of us are above this disease. You know, what we all have is a 24-hour daily reprieve. Just for today, I'm not going to use. And sometimes it's just for right now, I'm not going to use.
And if we can get through the right now and multiply that times however many times a day we need to get through, we've just gotten through a day. It's the old idea of today I will not use. But you got to break that day up into moments. This moment I will not use before you can ever get through the day. Yeah. Earlier you were talking about the need for resources. If resources were no problem, if you've got a genie in the lamp who can give you those resources, what is it you would like to be able to do toward recovery for others?
I think ultimately open up a treatment center someday.
What would that treatment center offer? Give us some of those bullet points, those highlights.
It would offer detox, inpatient rehab, transitional housing, anything and everything, mental health.
How big of a role does mental health play in all this?
It plays a major role. Usually people that are dealing with substance abuse usually are dealing with mental health too, and they self-medicate to try to deal with the mental health symptoms because they don't know any other way.
Okay. What do you see as some of the bigger causes? And obviously mental health, you just mentioned that. What do you see as some of the bigger causes, root causes of substance use disorder?
Trauma.
That was quick.
Abuse.
Yeah. I was in a situation yesterday where we talked about trauma, and I don't guess I'd ever thought of this before. It's simple. I should have, but the idea of some trauma is not avoidable. it is going to happen. I mean, just we look at our divorce rate, and some child feels abandoned by one parent or the other. I'm not putting a knock on that. I'm just saying it's fact. It's real. Some can deal with that and some can't. Well,
Some of us are born into it and don't have a choice.
yeah. So we've got all of that we've got to find a way to overcome. It's not always easy, and it can easily, abuse of different types can turn into that mental health issue, and then we turn to that numbing to deal with it. And of course, sometimes we don't even know why we're getting into it. So all of that together, what do you want folks to know about recovery?
That is, it's not just about quit using drugs or alcohol. It's about changing our whole way of life.
It's a lifestyle, not just a life choice. Yeah, and it goes much deeper than just slapping somebody's hand and telling them, stop doing that.
Right.
Don't you wish it was that easy?
Well, when it comes down to willpower and biology, you're going to lose every time.
Say that again.
When it comes down to willpower and biology, you're going to lose every time.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Let's just say that I'm lost in my addiction. What is the first step I should take?
Get yourself into a treatment center.
Go to that treatment center. What do I look for in a treatment center?
Make sure they have a detox program so they can medically detox you. Make sure they're co-occurring so they deal with mental health and substance abuse.
Just that combination together. And I'm going to guess it's got to be a fine line between the two, and sometimes you can't distinguish that line.
Well, what they've found is, you can't just treat one, because if you just treat one, you're going to relapse, or, whether it's a mental health relapse or a substance abuse relapse. So they found with the greater success rate is to treat both at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. What is an overall piece of advice that you want to give to somebody who's out there struggling?
There's hope. There's hope. As long as you're still breathing, there's still hope. You're never too old to find recovery.
Okay. Is there anything else you want folks to know about your experience or your work or the work that's available out there, or any kind of aid or asset that you want to give them?
Stay connected. Go to meetings. Call your sponsor. Pray, meditate, exercise, and don't pick up no matter what. You do them 5 things, you'll be okay.
Repeat those again.
Pray, meditate, go to meetings, call your sponsor, exercise, and don't pick up no matter what.
There you go. Those are pretty good bullet points to end with here. Lee, thank you. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your willingness to share with us, to give us your story, and happy where you are today. Folks, we're going to close a little bit differently here today in remembrance of 9/11. Please listen.
At the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we walked history